In a forward observation post bristling with high-tech gear and hardened soldiers, she was the team's quiet anomaly. No rank, no call sign. To them, she was a shadow with a map. A liability. They never saw her become the hunter. The temporary outpost clung to the edge of a temperate rainforest in the Pacific Northwest, a scar of gravel and green canvas against an ocean of ancient firs. A damp chill, sharp with the scent of cedar and wet earth, cut through the morning air. Inside this bubble of military precision, Maya was an outlier. At 30, with her auburn hair pulled into a tight, practical braid and eyes that seemed to focus on things just beyond the visible plane, she possessed a stillness that felt alien amidst the nervous energy of the squad. She knelt beside a weatherproof Pelican case, its lid serving as a makeshift table for a sprawling, hand-drawn map. Her fingers, deft and certain, traced the contour lines of a steep ridgeline, her touch less a reading and more a communion. The men of Atlas Squad, led by a gruff operator named Logan, moved around her with the practiced ease of a unit that had bled together. They were a collection of hardened jaws, Oakley sunglasses, and state-of-the-art rifles. Their gear was a symphony of clicks and Velcro rips as they prepped for a patrol into the dense woods. Logan glanced in her direction, a smirk playing on his lips. He didn't address her directly. Instead, he called out to his second-in-command, a broad-shouldered man named Diaz. "Hey, make sure the topography analyst has fresh batteries for her GPS. If comms go down, at least we'll get a detailed after-action report on where we got lost." A few chuckles rippled through the group. They weren't cruel, just dismissive. It was the casual gatekeeping of an exclusive club, and she wasn't a member. Maya gave no reaction. Her focus remained on the map, where a sector labeled Whisper Creek was circled in red. She folded the map with clean, deliberate motions, the creases falling into place like muscle memory. She slipped it into a worn satchel, her movements economical and silent. A younger soldier, barely out of his teens, nudged Diaz. "What's her deal, anyway? She some kind of cartographer?" "Something like that," Diaz shrugged, his eyes scanning the tree line. "She draws maps. Just stay out of her way." As the squad finalized their preparations, the energy swelled, the scrape of a boot, the low hiss of a radio check, the metallic snap of a magazine seating into place. They were ready. They were lethal. They were also oblivious. No one saw Maya stand. No one marked the moment she adjusted the strange, handcrafted ghillie net on her shoulder, a mesh woven not with standard jute, but with the dried ferns and mosses of this specific forest. She picked up her rifle case, a long, anonymous hard shell, and moved toward the edge of the camp. Her boots made no sound on the gravel. She didn't walk into the forest, she dissolved into it, slipping between two giant, moss-covered firs as if the shadows themselves had reached out and pulled her in. The world changed the moment she crossed the camp's perimeter. The metallic scent of cordite and diesel was replaced by the rich, loamy perfume of decay and life. Sunlight struggled to pierce the thick canopy, dappling the forest floor in a shifting mosaic of green and gold. Here, sound died, swallowed by 1,000 years of accumulated pine needles and moss. Maya moved differently here. She wasn't a visitor, she was an element. The rigid posture she held in camp melted away, replaced by a fluid, predatory grace. She moved low to the ground, her senses fully alive. She wasn't listening for footsteps, she was listening for their absence, a break in the ceaseless chorus of insects, the sudden silence of a squirrel that had sensed an unnatural presence. Her eyes scanned not for movement, but for patterns that were wrong. A snapped fern, bent from below, not crushed from above. A patch of moss compressed in a way that defied natural settling. These were the whispers of the woods, and she was fluent in their language. Her inner world, so silent in the camp, was now a running stream of calculations. Wind from the northwest, 3 knots. Air is heavy, damp, sound won't travel far. Ground is soft, will absorb impact. She felt more at home here, pressed against the cool, damp earth, than she ever did, surrounded by the hollow camaraderie of the outpost. The forest didn't judge you on your rank or your social skills. It judged you on one thing alone, your ability to survive. She found them a half-mile in. Not the enemy themselves, but their signature. 4 distinct sets of footprints, pressed deep into the mud near a creek bed. She knelt, her gloved fingers hovering over the impressions. One heavy, heel-dominant stride, likely carrying the primary long-range system. 2 lighter, more agile prints, spaced wider, flankers. The 4th, methodical, precise. The commander. This wasn't just a sniper team. It was a hunter-killer squad, fully configured and moving with unnerving confidence. A cold certainty settled in her gut. They weren't just here to observe. They were here to erase her team from the map. Her mission had just changed. She wasn't here to analyze the terrain anymore. She was here to sanctify it. Maya ascended the ridge with the patience of a glacier. It took her nearly an hour to cover 300 yards, a painstaking crawl that left no trail. She finally settled into her nest, a natural hollow formed by the immense, gnarled roots of a fallen Sitka spruce. The position was perfect, offering a commanding view of the opposing slope while being buried in deep shadow, shielded by a curtain of hanging moss. From here, she was invisible. She was a ghost. Through the high-powered optic of her rifle, the enemy squad came into focus. They were professionals, their setup a model of fieldcraft. 2 of them, a sniper and his spotter, were dug in near the crest of the opposite ridge, their long-barreled rifle aimed down toward the valley her team was scheduled to patrol. They were the core of the threat. But it was the other 2 that drew Maya's attention. They formed a mobile security team, positioned slightly lower on the flank, moving with a restless energy. They were the watchdogs, tasked with preventing exactly what Maya was doing right now. Their overlapping fields of fire created a deadly, interlocking web of security. But Maya saw the flaw. It wasn't in their positioning or their equipment. It was in their confidence. They moved with the arrogance of a team that believed they owned the forest, that their technology made them infallible. The flankers' sweeps were rhythmic, predictable. The main sniper remained too static, too focused on his primary kill zone. They were hunting, but they weren't listening. The tension ratcheted up. One of the flankers paused, lifting a thermal monocular and scanning the area where Maya was hidden. Her heart rate didn't change. She controlled her breathing, slowing it to a meditative rhythm, 4 seconds in, hold for 6, 4 seconds out. She knew her handcrafted ghillie suit, saturated with the cold moisture of the earth, would bleed her heat signature into the background noise of the forest floor. The thermal scope saw nothing but cold dirt and roots. The flanker hesitated for a beat, a flicker of professional paranoia, before shrugging it off and continuing his patrol. It was a fatal mistake. He had looked, but he hadn't seen. Maya, on the other hand, saw everything. She saw their patterns, their blind spots, their arrogance. And she saw the precise, fleeting moments where their web of security would unravel. The forest held its breath. Maya became part of that silence. Her first targets had to be the flankers. They were the eyes and ears of the enemy squad, and their mobility made them the most immediate threat. She waited, her crosshairs settled on the chest of the first flanker. His partner was moving away from him, just beginning a turn at the edge of his patrol route. For a span of perhaps 5 seconds, their lines of sight would not overlap. It was an eternity. Her finger tightened on the trigger. The shot was not a bang. The advanced suppressor on her rifle bled the supersonic crack into a dull, flat thump, a sound indistinguishable from a heavy pinecone falling on soft earth. The first flanker crumpled, his collapse so sudden and inert it looked like a puppet with its strings cut. Before the body had even settled, Maya's rifle had swiveled. Her bolt cycled with oiled precision, the motion and extension of her will. The second flanker had just started to turn back. He hadn't registered the fall of his partner yet, but a subtle shift in his posture, a tensing of the shoulders, signaled a dawning unease. He would never know why. The second shot was a mirror of the first. Another soft thump, and the flank security team ceased to exist. Now, chaos erupted on the enemy's radio, audible to Maya only as a faint, tinny squawk through the ambient noise. The main sniper team knew something was terribly wrong. The spotter, panicking, broke cover, rising slightly to get a better view, his binoculars sweeping frantically across the wrong sector of the forest. He was searching for a muzzle flash that never came, a sound he never heard. Maya didn't fire. Instead, with her free hand, she picked up a small, loose stone and tossed it underhand. It clattered down a rock face 20 yards to her left. It was a primitive, almost insulting trick. And it worked perfectly. The spotter's head snapped toward the sound, his body turning, exposing his entire torso for a fatal second. The third shot was his eulogy. Only one remained, the primary sniper. He was the best of them, and he knew he was being hunted. He didn't move. He didn't make a sound. He vanished into his own camouflage, becoming another lump of shadow on the ridge. A deadly silence descended, a duel of patience between two invisible predators. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Maya's muscles screamed, her eye aching from the strain of the scope. She waited. Then she saw it. Not a movement, but the absence of a natural one. A single drop of rain had beaded on the enemy sniper's scope lens. As he made the slightest, most infinitesimal adjustment to his cheek weld, the droplet distorted the light for a fraction of a second. It was all she needed. The fourth and final shot was the quietest of all, a whisper of judgment that crossed the valley and found its mark. The quartet was silenced. Back in the command tent, the air was thick with disbelief. Logan stared, stone-faced, at a massive monitor displaying a crystal-clear, high-resolution drone feed. On the screen, four bodies lay scattered across the enemy ridge, their positions forming a grim, geometric pattern. They looked like discarded toys. "Rerun the thermal overlay," Logan commanded, his voice a low growl. A tech analyst, his face pale, tapped a few keys. A heat map washed over the image. "Nothing, sir," the analyst stammered. "No muzzle flash, no heat bloom from a projectile trail. I've run the sensor logs 5 times. There was no incoming fire. It's like, they just dropped dead." "That's impossible," Diaz muttered, leaning closer to the screen. "Men don't just drop dead." "Who was in that sector?" "No one, sir. That area was designated a no-go until your team cleared the valley." Suddenly, a small notification blinked in the corner of the system log. The analyst squinted. "Wait a second. I'm getting kill markers. All 4 tangos tagged as neutralized by Operator 7. Logan spun around. "Who the hell is Operator 7? We don't have an Operator 7 on this deployment." A silence fell over the tent, broken only by the hum of the electronics. Then, a quiet voice came from the back. It was the young soldier who had mocked Maya earlier. "Sir," he said, his voice barely a whisper. I think that's her." Every head turned toward him, then, as if pulled by a string, toward the tent's opening. Logan stormed out, his face a mask of confusion and dawning comprehension. He found Maya at the wash basin at the far edge of the camp. She was methodically scrubbing the mud and camouflage paint from her face and arms, the water turning a murky brown around her hands. Her rifle case lay on the ground beside her, zipped shut. She didn't look up as he approached. The entire squad had gathered now, watching in a stunned, reverent silence. The casual dismissal from the morning had evaporated, replaced by a profound, unsettling awe. I didn't even hear anything," the young soldier whispered to Diaz. Diaz's eyes never left Maya. He watched her wring out her cloth, her movements calm and deliberate, as if she were merely washing up after a long day of clerical work. "That's the point," Diaz said, his voice filled with a respect that bordered on fear. They didn't either. As dusk painted the sky in shades of bruised purple and orange, Maya sat alone on a supply crate, away from the low murmur of the camp. The wind was picking up, rustling the canvas of the tents, a sound like a collective exhale. Her rifle case was at her feet, a silent testament. In her hand, she turned over a small object, something she'd retrieved from the lead sniper's position. It wasn't a dog tag. It was a small, hand-carved wooden charm, worn smooth with time, its markings unfamiliar. She had picked it up not as a trophy, but as a quiet acknowledgement. A sign of respect for a fellow craftsman, now silenced. Her mind drifted back to her final assessment at the Special Warfare School, years ago. She had failed. Not because she'd missed a target or been detected, but because she had refused to give verbal confirmation during a simulated infiltration. The instructor had screamed for a status check over the radio. She had remained silent, believing that true stealth was absolute, that any sound was a compromise. They had called it insubordination, a failure to follow protocol. They marked her record, does not integrate effectively within a team structure. Here, in the fading light, with the weight of the small wooden charm in her palm, she knew they were wrong. Her silence wasn't a flaw. It was her shield. It was her weapon. It was the reason Logan's team would be sleeping in their bunks tonight and not lying cold on a mountainside. Inside the command tent, the drone footage looped endlessly. The official report would be sanitized, the incident likely attributed to unforeseen environmental hazards, or a rival faction. But the men of Atlas Squad, the ones who had seen the 4 bodies appear from nowhere, who had watched the ghost-like woman wash the forest from her hands, would know the truth. They would never look at her, or the silent spaces on their maps, the same way again. She was Operator 7. The woman who was never there, until she was everywhere. You've just witnessed the story of Maya, a woman defined not by the rank she lacked, but by the silence she commanded. In a world that prizes noise and recognition, she reminds us that true strength often operates in the shadows, unseen and uncelebrated. Her story is a testament to quiet competence. Who in your life embodies this silent strength? Share your stories in the comments below, and let's comment with respect for the unsung heroes among us. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe for more stories that uncover the extraordinary and the unexpected.